Well, I am excited to say welcome back, everyone, to Mythellaneous. The long-forgotten spin-off show of the Fake Nerd Podcast is back for a couple of specials, but hopefully it will lead to more. I am Brandon T. McClure, your host and your guide on this special of episodes, which I'll get into in a minute, with my Mythellaneous co-host, Sparks Whitty. How are you, sir?
I'm good. It's nice to be back. You say forgotten, but certainly some people have kept the will alive. My wife being one of them.
Really?
Well, it's her favorite logo.
You know what? It is one of our best logos. I've been pestering you for years to try to get Mythellaneous off the ground. Scheduling was very difficult. We weren't sure how we wanted to kind of approach the series going forward, but I think now we've kind of gotten something, and certainly we have a couple episodes to record soon. So
yeah, we definitely have something for the moment.
But I'm really excited to be back. You know, for this is actually really emotional for me. I will just say quickly, as people probably know from the Fake Nerd Podcast, know that my father passed away recently, and he really loved this show. He really liked that we did this show, and so it's really happy that we get to do this. So I'll just tell you guys what we're doing here. We are actually going to do, if you know from the title of this episode, we are going to go through each Indiana Jones MacGuffin. Mm-hmm. So the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, the Sankara Stones, and the Crystal Skulls. And then we'll also do the Dial of Destiny. But that will be post Dial of Destiny when we know a bit more of what that actually is.
Right. And not every episode is going to come out before Dial of Destiny. So
no, that's true. But this is kind of me trying to do all the Indiana Jones episodes I can possibly think of on every single one of our podcasts. I think this is the only other one.
Now that this is official, we had the main conversation, this and real score.
Yeah.
Jesus.
If there was an animated show based on Indiana Jones, you bet your ass I'd be doing an animation station.
If we were a fully funded podcast with endless time, I'm sure we would have done a Fake Nerds Watch about the Indiana Jones show.
Oh my god! Like I did think about it, but man, that show is weird.
Yeah, and
long. Yeah. So, but you know, we do what we can. But I'm really excited to do this one. This is kind of a special project that I just kind of had the idea for. So. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the 4 main MacGuffins of the Indiana Jones franchise and say how the movie interprets them and how they are interpreted through their myths, the legends, in this case, the Bible.
Right.
So the first episode, this episode, we're going to be talking about the Ark of the Covenant, the quote unquote true history behind the Ark of the Covenant.
Sure.
So I guess, unless Sparks, you want to say any more preamble, we should get going.
No, I'll just say, this is very much a part of how we were able to make this come about, and the formatting we knew we needed to do to make it happen is that, and it's your passion, is that you have to lead the way on this one, and I am a follower, and I'm here to bounce off of you and for you to bounce off of, but you are leading it, and I am merely following and being the soundboard to your research. Just for clarification, I did no research.
You've seen the movie.
I've seen the movie. That's it.
Okay, so let's get right into it. As Spark said, yes, this is all going to be kind of my research because this is my passion. I love Indiana Jones, so let's get right into it. This is also the first time we're doing this in video. Mythellaneous, first time in video. So the audio people won't know this, but I just put up a picture of the Ark of the Covenant on the screen for just reference.
I guess maybe just real quick, we should clarify that Mythellaneous's first season and only season so far was pre-YouTube for us, us doing YouTube and all that stuff. So we're kind of like soft relaunching Mythellaneous. We're not really starting over, but we are kind of like refinding our legs. This is kind of the not initially intended, but ultimately the way we are stumbling into it. So bear with us.
Yeah. So
here.
little bit of learning curve, a little bit of growing pains as we kind of get back into the swing of things. But let's get into it with the Ark of the Covenant. So I've written so much here. My first draft of this was incredibly boring. I want to be very clear. I had a crisis of self when I first wrote this. I was like, oh my God, this is the most boring thing I've ever read in my life.
I promise to you it's not going to feel that way. I promise to stare at you lovingly and have I love you written on my eyelids as I blink.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Completely dedicated to what you teach me.
I appreciate it. Also, we're not going to talk about like the other objects within the Indiana Jones franchise. It's just the main MacGuffins of all 4 films.
So you're not talking, you mean like not the idol at the beginning or...
Yeah, not the idol, not the Cross of Coronado, just the Ark, the Grail, the Sankara Stones. The Sankara Stones, that'll be the next one. That's a really interesting story.
Brandon will find a way to, like, I don't know, 10-year down the road. You know what? We should do all the other objects in the indie franchise. All the things they mentioned in passing. We're going to pump out 6 more indie episodes.
There'd be no point because there's no Indiana. Oh, I guess 10 years maybe. What? He'll be like 90?
I don't know. You could do it in time with the game.
Oh, shit. That
would be out sooner than 10 years, but like you could.
Yeah. That's the Basement Arcade Indiana Jones episode.
There it is.
Okay. So, all right. So let's get started. As audiences will know by now, I'm a big fan of Indiana Jones. There's many Indiana Jones episodes coming, and I've already come on the Victor podcast, family podcast. I love Indiana Jones as a character. For more on that, check out Conversation, which is out by the time this is out, most likely, with Ken Knapsack. Okay, so one of the things that make the franchise so interesting to me is the mystical artifacts at the heart of the franchise. Mm-hmm. So the Ark of the Covenant, Sankara Stones, the Holy Grail, and even the Crystal Skulls. I have always had a fascination with the Crystal Skulls, even when I was a kid, even before the movie.
I'm pretty excited to get to that one because, like, I will admit, when we get to that one, I do kind of want to talk about like actual modern, like, I don't know what the correct term is, like new ageism use of crystals and crystal skulls and how that connects. Anyway.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. The Crystal Skull is super fascinating, but this isn't about that. These MacGuffins serve to propel Jones's journey forward, but aren't always the point of the story. So if you remember Holy Grail, the point of the story is not the Holy Grail. Arguably, the Ark of the Covenant isn't the point of this one either. But anyway, for context, because we're going to be using the term MacGuffin a lot. For anybody who doesn't know what a MacGuffin is, I'm going to real quickly just explain it. A MacGuffin is something that the main character or characters have to search for. That's really all it is. It was popularized, not created by, but popularized by Alfred Hitchcock, who famously said, quote, the MacGuffin is the thing that the spies are after, but the audience doesn't care, end quote. Admittedly, though, Indiana Jones probably changed that way of thinking. I think the Indiana Jones franchise kind of made the MacGuffins really like popularize the idea that these are like, it's the audience does care about these things more than they do what the story is. Because Hitchcock never made it his point, but I think fans think that Indiana Jones's point is the MacGuffins. But that's a different debate.
I wonder if that varies from movie to movie.
Maybe.
Because I kind of agree with you. I don't think that the Ark is the point in this one. And I don't think it's true of
Holy
the Grail. But it's definitely true of the Crystal Skull. Mm-hmm. And it is kind of true of the stones to a degree.
Yeah.
That one I could... This is neither here nor there. Continue with what you were doing.
All right. That's a debate for... I don't know. It's a debate for today and maybe a different episode. We'll see. There's a few debates that I think we're going to return to within the series. But so for this series, I want to go through each of the 5 Indiana Jones films, including Dial of Destiny, which is not out at the time of this recording, and talk about the real mythological stories that surround them. So one episode for each. For this episode, I'll be focusing on the one from Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Ark of the Covenant. This is also going to create a bit of a gray area for Mythellaneous. I want to just put that up there up top because technically anything that has to do with the Bible is theology and not mythology. Mythology is primarily used when studying ancient religions, and it feels like the only reason why we don't use the same terms to talk about stories from the Bible is that it's not an ancient religion, controversially.
Sure.
I did ask my partner, what is the difference between mythology and theology? And we got into a heated debate. That's the debate that I think is going to come up again, because I think that theology and mythology are one and the same, personally.
Sure.
But, if you don't, that's fine. I dare anybody who believes they're not to really give me an answer. Like, why are they different?
I didn't come prepared for this.
Hey, you said you didn't do research.
No, and I didn't think about like why mythology and theology are different. So
yeah, right. It's an interesting thought, but again, kind of one of those things that I think probably throughout the series we'll return to this debate.
Sure.
Specifically, I think with the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I don't know if I should read this paragraph. I go a little bit further into this stupid debate. Okay, I'll read this paragraph. No one worships the polytheistic gods anymore, so we look at them as stories from an ancient culture. But since thousands upon thousands worship the monotheistic god, we don't put it in the same category. But I challenge anyone to tell me what the fundamental difference is between any of the stories laid out in the Bible and the stories passed down from Egypt or Greece.
Sure. I mean, like... That's tough,
right?
I feel like Egyptian particularly throws that weird because I might not be 100% correct on this, but I'm pretty sure there are still people who like treat Egyptian gods as like part of their religion.
Yeah, maybe. I
don't think that's just considered defunct.
Mm-hmm.
But like Greek and Roman in large terms are considered defunct.
Mm-hmm. But they're all morality stories, just like what's in the Bible.
Yeah. I agree on that point. I think that my thing there was like, I think Egyptian kind of counters the whole idea of like, is the separation about people don't really take it seriously or worship it anymore? Because I think Egyptians would probably break that.
Yeah, maybe. I'd love to know if there are people who still actively believe in the Egyptian gods. I'd really love to know.
Sure.
Okay, well, anyway, let's talk about the artifacts. Let's talk about the Ark of the Covenant now.
Yes.
According to George Lucas, Philip Kaufman came up with the idea to use the Ark of the Covenant for the film after an old dentist of his who was obsessed with it. So I guess he was at a dentist's office, and his dentist was really obsessed with the Ark of the Covenant. So he was like, hey, if you ever do a movie, you should make it about the Ark of the Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
So even before Indiana Jones was a thing, Philip Kaufman was like, whatever this is, Ark of the Covenant. Kaufman wrote Rising Sun and The Outlaw Josie Wales and developed the story for Raiders with Lucas before it was passed to Lawrence Kasdan to write the script. For more on that, check out our Indiana Jones episodes with Victor Podcast. Much of what is detailed about the Ark is written in the book of Exodus. I'm not going to go into the entire book. So for anyone who doesn't know, the book of Exodus is the second book of the Bible and details the Israelites leaving Egypt after God chose them as his people. We've all seen The Prince of Egypt, right? It's that. That movie is the book of Exodus.
Right.
Or the Ten Commandments. It's been made into a movie. With less singing, probably. They might have sung, but who knows?
That's a shame.
Just a side note real quick that I thought was interesting. Apparently the Jewish people are descendants of Israelites, but Israelites are not strictly Jewish, which is not something I knew.
Mm-hmm.
The name refers to the people whom the Hebrew Bible describes specifically as the direct descendants of any of the sons of the patriarch Jacob, who was later named Israel by an angel. Also, this event might not have even happened anyway, so that's a completely different debate, though.
Sure.
I read many accounts where it was like, archaeologists actually don't think that this has happened.
Mm.
But anyway. Here's the ark, though. Now I'm at the ark. All of that preamble stuff. Now I'm at the ark.
Now we're here.
Now we're here. We did it. Sorry. It's not quite John Williams, but it's close.
Yeah.
Also known as the Ark of Testimony or the Ark of God. The Ark of the Covenant is considered to be one of, if not the most sacred relic of the Israelites. The aforementioned book of Exodus describes the Ark as a wooden chest, quote, a wooden chest made in pure gold with an elaborately designed lid called the, I knew I should have looked this up again, Coperet, I believe.
Okay.
It's called. Or quote unquote mercy seat. It roughly translates directly as mercy seat. This is the part of the ark that has the two cherubs. So if you look on the picture, here's the two winged creatures on the top of the ark. That's the mercy seat.
Right.
It was there because it was meant for God. So God would actually sit on the ark and talk to the Israelites on their journey. Mm-hmm. But most importantly, the ark contained the 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, which is the sand of the movie. These are the primary 2 reasons for the creation of the ark: to hold the commandments and to allow God to communicate with the Israelites. According to the New Testament, it also contained Aaron's rod and a pot of manna. So this was like, the New Testament is kind of like a retcon of the Old Testament. The Old Testament has the book of Exodus. The New Testament is like, I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's anything after Christ came back from the dead. Or he was, correct me if I'm wrong on this one. I don't talk a lot about the New Testament in this one because most of this is from the Old Testament.
Right.
But I think it's either after the birth of Jesus or after the death of Jesus is when the New Testament takes place.
Okay.
I think it's the birth of Jesus. This doesn't matter. That's a whole other thing. For those wondering, though, Aaron's rod is referred to as any walking stick used by Moses' brother, Aaron. The rod had magical abilities during the plagues of Egypt, but that seems to be a retcon, as I mentioned. To use the common vernacular, it appears to be a retcon.
Okay.
Because there's not much about Aaron in the Old Testament. So I think he was created in the New Testament.
Right. So functionally, just going back, for the Israelites, the ark functions as almost like a throne of God.
Yeah, pretty much.
No.
That they carry around. So this is just me speculating. The reason why I have a bit about Aaron's rod here is because I think that this is inspiration for the Staff of Ra. The Staff of Ra doesn't exist. That's made up for the movie. And so like the whole like Well of Souls thing and the putting the staff in there, that's all made up for the movie.
Right.
That has nothing to do with the Bible. I think it's possible.
And like clarifying. Yeah. Staff of Ra, it's not just that it doesn't exist in terms of relation to the Ark of Covenant. It doesn't exist, period.
Yeah, there's nothing. It seemingly came from nothing. I think it came from Aaron's rod, though. I think they saw that and extrapolated that and turned it into the ark, the Staff of Ra.
Sure. Which
could be way off base, but who knows? The Well of Souls actually does exist, but I'll talk about that later. The pattern of the ark was given to Moses by God when the Israelites were based at the foot of Mount Sinai, and it was created about a year after the exodus from Egypt. Because it is too holy to be put on the ground or touched by anyone but the chosen, it is carried on poles inserted into the golden rings. So that's why Indy and Sala have to put the rods there. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of where the stuff I took out that was boring, the thing comes into play, because the Bible does name the 2 people who built the ark, like actually made it. And I didn't include it here because I didn't think it was necessary. But the Bible is incredibly detailed about the ark. Like it like goes into it. For example, I actually say, hey, here's something really boring. Apparently, The book of Exodus gives its exact measurements of 4 feet by 2 feet by 2.5 feet. So there it
That's
is.
very specific.
Yeah, it was wild to me because like it tells exactly who made it and exactly what the size of it. It's wild how detailed it is about the ark. It also says, I think I took this out, but it also says what it's made of. I do say what it's made of. Yes. So I'll get to that later because that's actually kind of interesting. The ark appears in 8 books in the Hebrew Bible, which is the Old Testament. 2 books in the Christian New Testament, that's the New Testament, and various poetry and prophetic texts. So they are Exodus, as we mentioned before, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Samuel 1 and 2 in the Old Testament, Kings 1 in the Old Testament, and Chronicles 1 and 2 in the Old Testament, Psalms, Jeremiah, Hebrews, the New Testament Hebrews, and Revelations in the New Testament. If anyone wants to go looking at those in either Bible, go right ahead. I do not detail every single one of those stories, though.
Right.
I was actually really surprised at how frequent the ark shows up in the Bible. I honestly thought it was. A lot of the ark, a lot of the Bible is just like section in the passages, and very rarely do they kind of continue on and kind of. It's not a narrative story, but very rarely do things continue on after their passage. And I was actually really surprised that the ark kept showing up.
Right.
The phrase, the Ark of the Covenant, is a roundabout translation of the Hebrew term Aaron Habrit, Aronhabbrit, which literally translates to chest of the covenant. So the term ark comes from the Latin arca, which means chest or box. That's where we get the English word for ark. In the Hebrew Bible, covenants represent contracts and promises between God and the Israelites. So the 10 Commandments, for example, were a covenant between them and represent the spiritual protection of God in exchange for them keeping the commandments. So as long as they held the commandments, God would protect them. Which I thought that was kind of cool. I don't know why. I guess the ark. I couldn't find exactly why it just isn't just called the chest of the covenant. Why it's just called the Ark of the Covenant. I think it's just because ark just became the vernacular.
Does it start that way right off the bat as far as translation?
Well, it starts with chest. It says so. It's basically chest of the covenant, and then it evolves into Ark of the Covenant, and that's because of the Latin word for chest.
When does it change into ark?
Well, I don't know. The translations. So I did try to find this. The translations all read Ark of the Covenant, but the direct translation of the original text in Hebrew is chest of the covenant. So I think that's just kind of. Oh, but maybe it happened because when they translated the book into Latin,
right,
and that just became Ark.
Sure,
that's possible. That's just kind of one of those things that's lost the time, though, of when exactly that change happened. Because of its holiness, no one was supposed to directly touch the ark, and it even killed one man who touched it. So this story is actually really funny. So it's not funny. A man died, but they're holding the ark, and it's kind of wobbling.
Okay,
and so the guy like supports it and immediately dies. So that sucked.
That's just a story.
That's just a story.
This man died.
Because he was supporting the ark. So it was like, we're losing. Oh no, dies. Sucks.
Wow.
So this begs the question: does the ark have power, as seen in the movie? So this is where we kind of get to where the movie portrays the ark. Does the ark have power, as seen in the movie? The answer to this seems to be yes. But the Hebrew Bible isn't clear if it has power. If it has power, sorry, I forgot to emphasize. If it has power, or if it acts as a conduit for God's power. So the in the movie, when Belloc opens the Ark, all these like ghostly figures come out of it and kill all the Nazis, right?
Right.
Nothing like that happens in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
but it does seem to have a ability. And I got a little bit about that picture, by the way. The picture that's in the movie. That's kind of cool.
Okay.
But that's a little later. Sizzle from my report.
Right. So like is it that in the original versions that the implication is that the 10 Commandments were the source of the power, not the Ark itself? The Ark is just a container.
In the movie?
In the text
So in the text, it seems to be the Ark itself, the thing that is holding the 10 Commandments, has power. The commandments itself don't have power outside of just being a contract with God. The Ark itself, which is why I think a lot of scholars think it's not the Ark. It's actually it's conduit for God's power. Like God is protecting the Ark, and therefore the commandments.
Sure. Okay.
So yeah.
I guess you can make an argument that within the Ark is contained the voice of God, since the 10 Commandments come from God.
That's a good point. Yeah, it could be that he is. I mean, he apparently like sits on the Ark frequently and talks to people. But yeah,
so a wild deleted scene,
right? It's just God. So anyway, but regardless of this, the Ark is responsible for things like death, diseases, and just general misfortunes wherever the Ark goes. Here are some of the things that the Ark did when people touched it. I also read that people weren't supposed to look at it, so it had something draped over it. Some say it had its own tent called the tabernacle. Mm-hmm. So like it would be like draped in a tent because people weren't allowed to see it. And some sources say that was actually, those like when you watch like older movies and you see like servants taking royalty around, and they have like they're holding like the things up.
Yeah,
there's some people who think that that's what this was. Like it was like that, but for the Ark, and that was actually because God was constantly with it. So God would be sitting in this caravan constantly.
Mm-hmm.
That's not. I don't believe that's from the Bible. That just seems to be how people have interpreted it over the years.
Sure.
But some sources do say that it was at least had a draping over it so that people wouldn't see it.
So God's just sitting in a warehouse now.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so when this is the story I just told you, by the way. So when a man touches it in the Book of Kings to keep it steady as they cross an uneven surface, he is instantly killed.
It very much feels like any time with this that God's power is to be observed, God's always using his power to do terrible, terrible things.
Yeah. Well, he's doing it to protect, outside of this dude who just tried to protect the Ark, he's doing it seemingly to protect the Israelites.
Okay.
Like that's what the covenant is, right? It's, you take my 10 commandments around and I will protect your people. But he's also, the Old Testament, God is a very vengeful person.
Yeah, the Old Testament. But like it's always like so long as your people never look inside, or heaven forbid if you even look at this box.
Yeah.
I will ruin your day.
Yeah, God's kind of a dick. When the Ark was stolen by the Philistine army in the book of Samuel, the Philistines repeatedly had health issues and misfortunes, so they returned the Ark to the Israelites to prevent further misfortune. Can you just imagine just stealing the Ark and just being like, no, take it back. We don't want this thing.
Mm-hmm.
A group of 70 people from Beth Shemesh who decided to look into the Ark were instantly killed for doing so. The city walls so during the siege of Jericho, which is a famous siege in the Bible, where the Israelites were sieging Jericho, the Ark was toted around the city walls in a 7-day procession accompanied by 7 priests sounding 7 trumpets, and made the city walls come tumbling down. So the ark does seem to have some sort of power.
Sure.
It is said that if people open the ark, they die, but I couldn't find a specific story about it happening, except I just read that. So that was a typo that I just read out.
Cool.
That's cool. That's fun. It appears that the powers and ghosts, so the powers and ghosts and melting faces are all made up for the movie. Even the image that Indiana shows the government agents is not a real Bible image. So the image that he shows in the picture. This is the ark. What's this? Oh, it's lightning, I guess. Power of God, whatever.
Right.
That's drawn by Ralph McQuarrie.
Sure.
So that's a new image that he created for the movie specifically.
Yeah, I mean, like, no offense to art from the Bible, but it looked like something made, drawn in the 80s.
A little bit. It does look like Bible-esque, so good on Ralph
No, I mean, like,
McQuarrie.
it's definitely pulling from the art style. I don't mean to insult, but, like, it's not, it doesn't have the same sensibilities and clarity of those types of images. They do a good job. Like, I don't mean to shame.
I always liked that image. I did find a pretty good quality image of it that Ralph McQuarrie shared later in his life. Anyway, so one of the things that has plagued people for hundreds of years is whether or not the Ark of the Covenant is or was real. Quote, different people will give you different answers to that question, end quote, says Barrett Halpern, who is a Penn State professor of ancient history, classics, and ancient Mediterranean studies and religious studies. I'm sorry, his title got so long there. I kind of lost it there. He continues, quote, the Ark is a regular feature in the Old Testament, making several appearances in the first 5 books of the Bible. The various references to the Ark are pretty consistent, and when you add it all up, it seems like the Ark was a real article. What do you think?
Do you know, because I don't, and I'm a whittle baby who doesn't care, do you know if the 10 Commandments are somewhere? Are they physically somewhere?
What'd you say? You cut out for a second there.
The 10 Commandments, are they physically somewhere?
No, they're not physically anywhere.
Right, yeah, okay. So we've never seen them.
No.
Okay. So I could totally buy that at one point there were stone tablets that they said, yeah, these are the 10 Commandments. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Regardless of like how those necessarily came about, I'm sure they existed at some point in some form, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they put them in a box. Maybe not a box made of gold, just a box. And then like stories passed down and passed down and passed down. Like both those things are lost because they're not resources meant to last the test of time.
Right.
And they're not protected by God necessarily. And so like it turns into, like it was this gold box that contained the power of God's voice and like just we don't know where it went. Real important. We lost it.
So actually, maybe they didn't lose it. So there's some stuff about where it might be.
Sure.
So I realize now that I'm kind of coming up to the end of this. This is the last section I have, which is the where, if it's real, where could it be? And I remember that I took out the very boring parts of what the Ark was made of. So quickly from just what I remember, it's made of a special type of wood that grows on Mount Sinai, and then plated in gold. So it isn't a gold box; it's a wooden box that is plated in gold.
No, yeah. I understood that was the description.
Oh,
I'm saying I bet there was just a wooden box at one point.
And they were like,
art.
Yeah, God.
Right. And they keep passing down the story. They're like, so the box got busted up, and they're like, oh no, that box was plated in gold. And you could even say that like definitely these things exist at one point, and then later like it didn't, and then they were like, all right, well we're gonna make this box with fancy plated gold, and we're gonna say they're in there, and no one can look. No one double checks if the 10 Commandments are in there.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine the person who died by looking in the box was just stabbed?
Yeah, right.
He's just like, no one must know.
And then his body's in there. The box is just heavier, and it's like that's God's will.
That's God's will. God wanted that to happen. It kind of feels a little bit like we talked about with the ancient mythologies, how they kind of work backwards.
Well, this is one of those things where like we've said this in our first season when we were talking about mythologies, and that like to an extent, some amount of it you always understand you're playing a game of telephone.
Yeah.
And like the truth is the reality is probably somewhere in the mix there, but like you will not get the full picture.
Right.
Like it's just too old, you know? It's like how we can't get the full picture on dinosaurs. Like we just really we can't.
Yeah.
We'll do our best, but we can't. And it's the same with these kinds of things where like that is so long ago and so many people have been able to pass off their narratives on it that like some amount, who knows what amount is true. And then I don't know.
So it gets even wilder because you're absolutely correct, Sparks. This is exactly what's happened with whether or not the Ark is real.
Mm-hmm.
So this professor is basically saying the same thing that people say about dragons, right? Like there are so many accounts of dragons all around the world that there has to be some truth to them. I kind of believe that anyway. Mm-hmm. Of like, how do all these religions and cultures have such similar accounts without having interacted with each other at this point? And they all come up with this idea. It's very similar here, where if this ark shows up in various points in history, or it's specifically the Bible, and it's consistent, then surely there must be some truth here.
Yeah, I believe there was a box.
There was probably a box.
I believe there may have even been more than one box.
So if it's real, where could it be? Where could it be? In
a museum.
Actually, The Librarians, the TV series and the movie series, has it in the Library of Alexandria.
Sure they do.
Yeah. After the Jerusalem temple was destroyed in 586 BCE, which is the last place the Ark was seen, it disappeared from history completely. Some claim that it was stolen, while others claim it is on Mount Nebu, which is where Moses saw the Promised Land. So, he went up this mountain. He was like, oh, look, Promised Land. And it was Jerusalem, I think.
Sure.
A couple places have actually claimed to have it. They say they have it.
Sure.
But most popularly, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims that they've had it for centuries. So according to church leaders, the Ark of the Covenant has been closely guarded in Aksum, Ethiopia, at the Church of St. Mary of Zion. Church authorities, however, won't let anyone see it because only one man, quote, the guardian of the Ark, is allowed to see it. So no one can see if their claim is authentic.
Right. I mean, like, well, this is the thing, right? Is like when you have a box that contains the power of God and you say the rules are you can't look in it. In fact, it's better if you never look at it. You can kind of put it wherever you want.
Right, exactly. So the guardian, so the guardian of the Ark, apparently people have been asking for years to like, hey, if you say you have it, can we go see it? Can we look at it? Can we see if it's the genuine article? And they're like, no, only the guardian of the Ark can see it. And he says it's there. What if that guy like lost it? Like, what if it was real and that dude just lost? And he's like, no one must know.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where like, if it's there, we'd know. It kind of feels like if it's a real thing, you'd know.
Yeah. Another claim, though, is that the Ark was hidden in a. This is a lot of words that I don't know the meaning of. It was hidden in a warren of passages beneath the first temple in Jerusalem before the Babylonians destroyed it in 586 BC. So the Jerusalem temple, just to makes a little bit more sense, the Jerusalem temple that was destroyed, which was the last place the Ark was seen, these people are claiming that it was hidden underneath in a bunch of caverns.
Sure.
But that theory can't be tested either because the site is home to the Dome of the Rock Shrine, which is sacred in Islam. So digging beneath it simply isn't an option. The only reason why I bring this up, though, is because this is where the real Well of Souls is.
Mhm.
So this is the Well of Souls that that the movie it reinterprets as in Egypt.
Right.
It's actually the name of a natural cave beneath the dome of the rock. So not a snake-filled cavern in Egypt. Thank goodness. I mean, there could be snakes, but it's not in Egypt.
Uh-huh.
A couple of other possibilities, though, for where the Ark could be currently is hidden by priests under the Temple Mount for safekeeping, which is I think that's the same one, but it was listed as a different thing, so I put it in here just in case.
Okay.
Spirited away to an unknown site before the Babylonians even arrived in Jerusalem. So someone took it and just bailed.
Right.
The Ark was removed by divine intervention, so God basically took it back. Taken by an Ethiopian prince. That's all it says, I assume, to Ethiopia. But it's all it says was it was taken by an Ethiopian prince.
Uh-huh.
Or just destroyed.
Sure.
It was just destroyed in that battle. Which is possible. Honestly, really likely. If it did exist, it probably was just destroyed.
Right, because it was probably just a box.
It was probably just a box, exactly.
And again, maybe not the first box.
They just drop it and it shatters. Quickly make a new one. But yeah, so okay, that's kind of where it could be. So I'm just gonna say a little bit about how Raiders interprets that.
So what is the Well of Souls?
So the Well of Souls seems to be a natural cave system that's beneath something called the Dome of the Rock, which is a holy site in Israel. No, not in Israel. Yes, it is in Jerusalem. It is in Jerusalem, but it's sacred to Islam. So it's, I don't know what it looks like. It's where the first temple of Jerusalem was.
Okay.
And what exists there now is called the Dome of the Rock. And that's so underneath that is a natural cave system, and that's the Well of Souls.
Do you know why it's called the Well of Souls?
You broke up, what did you say?
Do you know why it's called the Well of Souls?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
I didn't think to look that one up. See, that's why, there you go. That's why you're here. Someone tell me, why is it called the Well of Souls?
I'm here to ask the questions that we're not going to have an answer to.
I'm going to look this one up.
Tune in next indie special when we go backwards and say, yeah, so the Well of Souls.
Hold on. I'm going to look this one up. Why is the Dome of the Rock the Well of Souls? Dome of Rock. I'm almost done with the report, so I can do this. I can vamp.
Is this good content?
Probably not, but whatever. Okay. So the Well of Souls, a partly natural, partly man-made cave location inside the foundation stone under the Dome of the Rock shrine in the temple. The cavity beneath the rock, accessible by a staircase near the south entrance, is known as Bur el Arwa, which translates into the Well of Souls. Interesting. There's like a whole other report here on the Well of Souls.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So, okay. So, yeah. So, this is also referred to as the Holy of the Holies by the Christians. Oh, so it's like a whole thing. Oh, the name Well of Souls derives from a medieval Islamic legend that at this place, the spirits of the dead can be heard awaiting Judgment Day. Although this is not a mainstream view in Sunni Islam, the name has also been applied to a depression in the floor of this cave and a hypothetical chamber that may exist beneath it. Yeah, and there's a artist rendition of it. So,
cool. So, because I asked because like you were about to lead into the film's interpretation, and it always felt to me like because they talk about the Well of Souls and they go to their version of the location that is the Well of Souls, that because the Ark was there is why it was the Well of Souls. And when you see it opened and the things come out, those are souls.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I always thought that like the movie's interpretation is that the Ark contains the Well of Souls, essentially.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
It's obviously wrong. But
Well, but like you can kind of backwards that, right? Like you can say that, like, they interpreted the idea of the Well of Souls being this place where these souls are awaiting Judgment Day, but with the Ark, right?
yeah,
They just put those souls in the Ark for the movie.
right. That's how it always felt, because like nothing you said gives any reason for like why do people come out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't think. I wonder if they. That's a really good point. Why do people come out of this thing? But maybe that's it. Maybe that's it because it's the souls.
My movie brain always assimilated that like the Well of Souls moniker and seeing souls come out of the Ark of Covenant, those were supposed to be like for the film connected narratively.
Yeah, I wonder also why they made that decision for. Oh, actually, hold on. I'm about to answer this question. I was hold on. So in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Ark was taken to the Egyptian city of Tanis by a pharaoh. Because of that, the city suffered major sandstorms that wiped it from the earth.
Okay.
That's from the movie. This is actually one of the theories for where the Ark was taken after Jerusalem. So there is a theory saying that a pharaoh took the Ark to Tanis, or an Egyptian city. The Egyptian city is never named originally. Lucas and Spielberg came up with it being Tanis. So they kind of took from a lot of different places of like, oh, well, the Well of Souls, we'll just put that in Egypt. The Pharaoh, at the time in the 80s, the Pharaoh theory was the most popular one.
Sure. And what makes the most cool adventure?
Right, it makes the most cool adventure, exactly. So they did that. Tanis, however...
Which is fine. No one is going to Indiana Jones movies expecting factually accurate history.
No, that's true. But they also, like... I think one of the things that makes Indiana Jones kind of fun is that, like, it's the way they interpret the history.
Yeah. I think it's also important to note that, like when they were making, especially like the original Indy trilogy, like the internet was not what it was.
They had encyclopedias.
Was not what it was. Like you had limited amount of resources that you could pull when you're trying to make a movie script.
Yeah, they probably had an encyclopedia that said like, oh, an Egyptian pharaoh took the Ark to...
I'm sure they consulted a expert, but you can't just get consultations with a bunch at that time.
Yeah. But there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more here about Tanis. Sure. That I think. So Tanis is a whole other report. Tanis didn't actually disappear. It's not a place. It wasn't a place that was plagued by sandstorms thanks to the Ark. That's all made up for the movie. But it is a real place. Tanis is a real place, but it was an abandoned city. It was found by a man named Pierre Montet in 1939, which I thought was interesting because that's only three years after Raiders of the Lost Ark. But rather than the Nazis in 1936. Montet is kind of a fun guy, though. So this whole Tanis thing, that's a whole other report. I don't want to go into a lot of this. So I just have a little bit about it. He's fun because he always blamed World War II for the reason that no one cared that he found Tanis. So he made this big discovery in 1939 about this abandoned city in Egypt. It was all intact, a little bit ruined, but it was all there. And he thought it should have made waves. Like it should have been like national news. But because World War II broke out, no one gave a shit.
Right.
And that could also be why people actually, and that mixed with Raiders of the Lost Ark might be why people don't actually know Tanis is a real place.
Sure.
But yeah, that's actually the report. That's all I got. So fun stuff. Yeah, I really enjoyed researching this. I had a lot more boring things to talk about before. I tried to keep it tight and knowledgeable and focused on just kind of the arc and how it related to the movie, because there's so much stuff that went into it, and the thing with Tanis and the Well of Souls and things like that. Although I probably should have done more on the Well of Souls. I'm glad we looked that up. That was fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
gotta keep an eye out for like some of those offshoots where they're mildly important.
Yeah, the Well of Souls one should have been researched, but Tanis, like, if you guys want to look up Tanis, I would recommend you do so. It's kind of an interesting story, but it's not for It's not for this.
Yeah.
My sources, though, I got sources. Obviously, the Bible. I did look in some Bible passages.
Sure.
I looked at the live science. All these sources, by the way, will be in the description below if anyone wants to go through them and link them. But Live Sciences article, The Ark of the Covenant, National Geographic's The True Story of the Lost City Made Famous by Indiana Jones. That's where I got the Tannis information.
Sure.
Star Wars Explained had a really good video on all the MacGuffins. So I'll kind of reference him a little bit. So it's called The Real History of the Ark of the Covenant. It's basically this, but in 10 minutes, far less detailed, just real quick, in and out.
Sure.
Bible Study Tools, The Ark of the Covenant. Britannica, Where is the Ark of the Covenant, which I've mentioned before. And Ancient Mysteries on the history website, Lost Ark of the Covenant. So yeah. Now that's the Ark of the Covenant, Sparks. What'd you think?
No, it's cool. How do you feel they did in interpreting that for a movie?
I think it's far more interesting in the movie.
Well,
and
sure.
I wonder how much going through it, you can kind of see where they piecemealed ideas and came up with their own stories and whatnot. And you can kind of bend over backwards to make a lot of the journey make sense within the religious mythology, theology, whatever you want to call it, to kind of see what they were thinking. But I think it's really funny how they interpreted specifically the Ark's power, because it comes from a place of like, this is a movie, so it has to be cinematic,
right?
So this is what they're going to do. It doesn't come from a place of this is what it is. Like, they could have. There's a part of the movie where Belloc touches the Ark and he just falls on his face, right?
Right.
But that's not interesting. That's not a cool ending to a movie.
Yeah.
So like a lot of this was just, it's over dramatized for film, and it makes the story a lot more interesting, I think.
What do you think the intention was for, like, what does Belloc think he's going to see when they open the Ark?
The 10 Commandments, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd assume.
Yeah.
But like,
the Nazis specifically, like, when he reaches his hand in and he pulls out the sand, he's expecting like a weapon, I think.
A weapon.
That's what because like there's nothing in here, it's just sand. And I was like, what do you think was in there?
Right, yeah, that's kind of my, like, if it is the 10 Commandments, right? Because they were just on stone, I guess if they were preserved well enough, they wouldn't be they'd be a little damaged, but I guess they wouldn't have eroded into sand necessarily.
I mean, the Rosetta Stone is still pretty much intact, and it's from around the same period.
Yeah. I mean, you think about but being kept in, I guess, how vacuum sealed tight is that? Like, how much oxygen is the rock getting? Like, all that kind of stuff. I just, something that always stands out to me in the film is, like, given all the information you have in the movie about, like, what the Ark is, I'm like, I don't know what they thought they were getting when they opened it.
Yeah. What did Belloc tell them they were looking for? What was his goal in finding the Ark?
Right, like, when it's sand, I'm like, in theory, wouldn't you have thought it was just going to be 2 stones?
Yeah, just 2 stones. If you go by the picture of like the power of God kind of Ralph McQuarrie picture, like, right, what does Belloc think opening the Ark will do, right? Like, opening the Ark isn't what creates that lightning power that we're seeing in that image. So what's he looking for? That's a really good question.
I think that's, like, it doesn't matter because, like, the adventure is the important thing in the movie, but just thinking about, like, what you've already shared about, like, what it actually was, the story basis, and then how they interpreted that in the film, I'm like, you can make the argument of, like, the common go-to, like, really great trope for these things is the Hitler's fascination with the occult. And so, sure, explain the Nazi thing, I guess. But for Belloc, like, what did you think you were going to find?
Yeah, because he makes a whole big deal of like, we have to open the Ark. Like, what if we open the Ark in Germany?
What did Indy think they were going to find?
Yeah. Well, he just wanted the artifact.
Right. Yeah.
That's a really good question. Because you never really think about, like, why do they open the Ark?
Right.
There's no reason to. Like, not really.
Well, from Belloc's perspective, right, there would be. If you are Nazis who believe what Hitler believes and believes like power of God resides in there, maybe you don't want to open it. But Belloc would, because in theory, Belloc believes there's just 2 big stone slabs in there.
Right.
And he wants to see them. And like that can be useful in itself, right? That's like worth something because they're the original 10 Commandments.
Yeah. It's a good point.
So that can buy you something.
Yeah. Something to ruminate on.
The US has just like a crap ton of things just like the Ark.
Yeah, I wonder what else is in that warehouse, quite honestly.
Paul.
Jesus, Paul. I haven't thought about Paul in a long time.
It's one of my favorite bits. I honestly thought that bit was incredible.
Okay, well, that's the Ark of the Covenant. I hope it was as detailed and as interesting as I could make it. I remember, because I had this idea, God, probably last year, Sparks? Sure. No, I had this idea when I was on my cruise. And I told this to you a little bit later. So
that's last year.
No, but I told you about it this year because it came back this year.
Yeah, but you had the idea last year.
Okay, but I told you about it, and then I remember a couple of months as we're like thinking about when to plan these. I remember because I was deep in the Ark of the Covenant report, and I was like, I might have bit off more than I could chew.
Right.
Because it was very boring.
Sure.
And only did last week did this report even come to fruition. So.
Right, because we're not talking about like. We're not talking about mythological tales the same way that we were before with this kind of stuff. You know, this is all artifact based, and it's like, what did the artifact do? And it's like, well, depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, and I do think there's interesting things to be had. Like I do think that the Ark eventually, like some of the surrounding stories around the Ark is really interesting. Is it real? Is it not? I think it's kind of funny. I think it's kind of interesting. So this is segueing. I'm going to segue into what we're going to be talking about next time, which is the Sankara stones. So the Sankara stones of all 4 MacGuffins is the only one at the time. Dial of Destiny. I don't know if Dial of Destiny is a real thing. I don't think it is. But of the original 4, the Sankara stones are the only ones that don't exist. They're not real.
Right.
I guess technically none of this is real, but this is the only ones that don't have a story attached to it.
Sure.
They are based on something else. I'm going to take out the Ark of the Covenant thing. They are based on something else. So the report there is going to be a little bit more detailed than the Ark one here, because I'm going to be talking about the Thuggee cult, what the stones represent in the movie, what they're based on in real life, and some of the mythological stories surrounding the real life artifacts.
Sure.
So I'm currently knee deep in that one. So hopefully I finish that one soon. But yeah, so that's it. That's it. Thank you for doing this with me, Sparks.
Yeah, happy to do it. Happy to have Mythellaneous back in some form.
Yeah, and I hope that this will springboard into something new. But we will be doing the Indiana Jones one. So as I said, the next time will be the Sankara stones.
Yes, that will be next. And if we're timing everything right and we have the time correctly, we're gonna get that and this out, and then you're probably gonna, audience members, go see Dial of Destiny in theaters, and then we'll do the rest of them because we're not getting all 4 out before. No, unfortunately, we just don't have the time. But we will get the first 2, and then we'll bookend it with the last 3. But guys, audience members, if you're interested in more Indiana Jones stuff, there's plenty more. I've talked a little bit about the Indiana Jones episodes that we did on the Fickner podcast, where we talk about the 4 films. Yeah, our cinephiles. They are available as cinephiles. You can check them out. Please do. They're a lot of fun. I really love talking about those movies. And hopefully I love talking about Dial of Destiny, which will be our big review coming up. Time will tell. And
Then there is, this isn't recorded yet, but soon we will have episodes of The Real Score, which is our newest show. About the films.
Real Score will be handling Indiana Jones, the trilogy, and then the following month, the Crystal Skull alone, and then after that, the Dial of Destiny. So across this month all the way through August, Indiana Jones on The Real Score.
So stay tuned for that. And then my episode of Conversation, which is probably out by the time you're watching this, but it's not out at the time we're recording this, with Ken Knapsack, which is just about Indiana Jones. We just talk about Indiana Jones and fandom and loving that character and being in that fandom. So yeah, a lot of Indiana Jones stuff for you guys to check out.
Someone might be checking out the Mythellaneous feed with absolutely no knowledge of the rest of these things. So I should clarify, our Cinephiles discussions on indie films are purely us discussing the movies like in general review fashion. The Real Score is us talking about the scores of the film. So what the music that John Williams made for the movies and how they connect with the films. Yeah. So that's what those shows are.
Yeah. And I think we should make a playlist on YouTube for this, just Indiana Jones. We should.
We'll talk about it. I don't know that there's quite enough videos to justify that, but
if we do, I'm going to put Conversation as a video.
I'll amend that. I'll amend that because I realize that there is a playlist with only 4 videos in it. We'll make a playlist. It just probably won't live on the main channel.
Yeah, that's fair.
But the reason is because we're probably putting Mythellaneous now on our main channel feed.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so I guess that's it. That'll do it. We're about an hour, so probably wrap up now.
Yeah, I think so.
Sparks, thank you for doing this with me. I hope you guys join us. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys join us for the next one. Of course, Mythellaneous. What are the social medias for Mythellaneous? Mythellaneous P definitely on Twitter. Is it on Instagram too?
I don't think so.
It's been a while.
We're gonna have to, we're dusting off the cobwebs, friends.
Yeah.
Mythellaneous is back, but we're figuring it out. We're dusting off the cobwebs. For now, why don't we just plug all the fake nerd social medias? We'll get Mythellaneous back up and running.
Yeah. So of course, I'm sure you can find I'm sure it'll probably be linked below. So check out the links below. But guys, Mythellaneous is part of the Fake Nerd Podcast family, a podcast where you can check out all sorts of shows, including Fake Nerd Podcast, which goes live every Sunday, where we talk about movies and TV shows and things like that, news, things like that. Come join us, have fun. The most recent episode is probably The Flash, I guess. We're all excited for The Flash. And coming up soon is Mission Impossible 3 and 4 discussion.
Yeah, we're doing the Mission Impossible franchise.
Yeah, and then importantly, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny will be at the end of this month. So
right, yep, that's there.
Stay tuned for that. Of course, there's also Fake Nerds Watch. There's Basement Arcade Pause Menu, Animation Station. We talked about The Real Score already. Fake Nerd Book Club. All these shows you can check out on this channel, on this YouTube channel. Some of them have audio feeds. If you're listening to this audio feed, please check them out. They're a lot of fun. Really enjoy doing them. And Fake Nerd Podcast on all the social medias. fakenerdguys@gmail.com. If you can figure out the Mythellaneous email us what you want to talk about on what you want us to talk about on Mythellaneous. Why not? Yeah, do that. I'm at BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. I also write for a few websites, including CBR.com, AtomicGeekdom.com, and the Indiana Jones article is coming to AtomicGeekdom.com soon. So stay tuned for that. And then KaijuRomanMedia.com. Sparks, where can people find you?
He's usually better at this, friends. He usually writes it all down.
I do. I don't have it written down.
You can find me at Sparks Witty on Instagram and Twitter, SPARKZ Witty, and all of the things that Brandon just said, except for the things that he's writing by himself.
So that'll do it, guys. So what did we end this? How did we end this show? Did we have a thing? Did we have a sign off?
I trusted you to
listen to those first episodes.
Boy, I think we did, but I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah. You know what? Next time we'll be more prepared. I hope you still enjoyed the report.
Now, friends, it's all myth to me.
There it is. Goodbye, everyone.